Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we cut through all the noise, we stack up the sources, and really try to pull out those vital insights just for you.
Mm,
Today, we're diving into something pretty fascinating. It's a work that's, well, over a century old now, all about mental science.
yeah,
Get ready, because this one might just stretch how you think about reality itself. In a good way, hopefully.
absolutely. We're looking at T. Troward's The Edinburgh Lectures on Mental Science, published way back in 1909.
Wow.
Yeah, and it might seem dated, but its goal was, and I quote, to indicate the natural principles governing the relation between mental action and material conditions.
Okay.
So our mission today is really to unpack this foundational text. Troward lays out what he sees as this timeless system for understanding how thought shapes our reality.
Right.
And what's really interesting, I think, is how he tries to bridge metaphysical ideas with, well, the science of his day. It's a unique blend.
Okay, so let's jump right in then. That core distinction he makes right from chapter 1, living spirit and dead matter. Sounds simple enough, almost obvious, right? But then he immediately flips it.
He does.
He says, look, your senses are fine, they're reporting correctly, but it's our interpretation of that sense data where we go wrong.
Exactly. We judge by appearances.
Yeah, and those old assumptions start to crumble when you look closer at what he's saying.
And if you connect that to, the bigger picture,
Mm,
even back then, physical science knew that no atom is truly dead.
right, like that solid lump of steel example.
Exactly. It's buzzing with energy, intense vibration. Nothing is truly still.
Okay.
So Troward asks, well, if everything is in motion, what actually makes something alive? What's the real difference?
And this is where it gets really interesting, I think.
Yeah.
He says it's not the motion itself, it's the degree of intelligence involved.
Ah, okay.
He compares, a plant to an animal or a dog to a human. His conclusion, the livingness of any individual life is ultimately measured by its intelligence.
So more intelligence means more like conscious control over its own movement, its own existence.
Precisely. It's a fundamental shift.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that leads straight to his main proposition. Spirit's quality is thought. Matter's quality is form.
Form, meaning it takes up space, it's limited.
Right. Extension in space. But thought, he argues, doesn't have extension. Think about life itself. You don't measure it in inches or pounds.
A mouse is alive as an elephant.
Exactly. Size doesn't matter for the fact of livingness.
So, okay, follow this logic then. If spirit, as thought, has no extension in space,
Uh-huh.
then it must be present in its entire totality, anywhere and everywhere. It's fully present at every single point simultaneously.
Whoa.
And then he links it to time. He says, where there is no space, there can be no time.
Because time requires movement between points in space.
Right. So pure spirit is outside of both space and time, completely unbound.
Yeah, that's a big concept.
Yeah.
So the idea of spirit as pure thought exists independently of time and space.
Completely.
And for us, practically speaking, this means an idea conceived on that level. It isn't just a future hope. It's actually present here and now.
Here and now, nothing is truly far away in spirit.
So all our ideas from that perspective exist in a kind of universal here and an everlasting now.
Yeah. And he insists this isn't just abstract philosophy. He says it's of vital importance in the practical application of mental science.
It really turns our usual way of thinking upside down.
Okay, so after laying that pretty mind-bending foundation,
Mm-hmm.
Troward then talks about this hierarchy of intelligence. It's not just us, it's cosmic.
Right, he sees this gradual descent in the scale of intelligence from humans down to, well, inanimate forms.
Which suggests that the ultimate principle of life must also be the ultimate principle of intelligence.
Yeah, and he sees evidence everywhere. The order of the universe, evolution.
Right.
He contrasts the cosmic intelligence, which operates by a law of averages. Remember that line? So careful of the type, so careless of the single
I
line.
know, like nature doesn't sweat the small stuff, allows for accidents.
Exactly. It plays the long game. And he contrasts that with our individual intelligence.
And this is super important for us, for you listening.
Mm.
He says, as intelligence evolves, that margin of accident gets smaller. We gain more control.
Continually increasing power of controlling the conditions of his own survival.
Yeah. Our conscious choice, our volition, isn't random. It's the outcome of this cosmic evolutionary process. We're meant to participate, not just be subject to averages.
And he has that great line, nature obeys us precisely in proportion as we first obey nature.
Which makes you ask, okay, how does my personal will fit into all this?
Right. And his answer involves recognizing others not just as not me, the non-ego,
Uh-huh.
but as alter ego, another version of oneself, a different expression of the same underlying spirit.
Moving from them to us on
Uh,
a deeper level.
exactly. And he says that recognition is the actual power the mental scientist uses to get results.
Okay. And he keeps reinforcing this idea that matter's foundation is spirit.
Yes, meaning there's this universal intelligence throughout nature, hidden, but there.
He calls it atomic intelligence.
Right. Which crucially responds to our individual intelligence.
So that's why mental treatment could work. Because lower degrees of spirit respond to higher degrees.
That's his model. It's like finding the right frequency to resonate with the universe.
Okay, so building on that,
Hmm.
he introduces the unity of the spirit.
Yes, this universal substance, the origin of everything. It's not confined anywhere.
Limitless as space itself.
And crucially, the infinite must be a unity. You can't have two infinites limiting each other. It has to be one thing.
Which leads back to that idea, wherever it is at all, the whole of it must be.
The whole thing,
Yeah.
everywhere, all at once.
So the entire spirit is present at every point in space right now.
And he says that omnipresence, that wholeness everywhere, is the fundamental fact of all being
Wow.
and the basis for any conscious spiritual work.
It's huge. So how does he connect something so abstract to actually doing something?
Well, he says this pure spirit is pure potential, infinite responsiveness and susceptibility,
Okay.
but it's devoid of individual personality.
Yeah.
It's impersonal.
Like a blank slate.
Exactly. A purely impersonal element upon which we can impress any recognition of personality that we will. It reflects what we put onto it.
Okay. So how does that impersonal spirit connect with our individual minds?
This is where he brings in hypnotism, which was pretty cutting-edge stuff back then.
Right.
To explain the dual nature of the human mind, you've got the objective mind, our everyday, conscious, reasoning self,
Uh-huh.
and the subjective mind, the inner, creative, subconscious part.
And the big takeaway from hypnotism for Troward was about the subjective mind.
Yes. He says it is only able to reason deductively and not inductively. Meaning it doesn't question the premise. It just takes whatever suggestion it's given, even a false one,
Okay.
and then reasons perfectly logically from that starting point.
So it doesn't analyze, it just accepts and runs with it.
Exactly. Which makes it, he argues, entirely under the control of the objective mind.
Wow. That really speaks to the power of belief, doesn't it?
Immense power. And here's the really wild part. The subjective mind isn't just passive. It's the builder of the body.
The builder of the body.
Yeah. Those hypnotic experiments apparently showed it could diagnose illness and even heal the body based purely on suggestion.
Just suggestion, leading to complete restoration to health.
That's what Troward reports.
Yeah.
He flat out says, our body represents the aggregate of our beliefs.
So if you deeply believe you're susceptible to illness,
Your body might manifest that. But if you impress upon your subjective mind the idea that you are a fountain of perpetual life,
it externalizes health.
that's the idea. It implies chronic issues might stem from subconscious beliefs about ourselves, a whole different path to healing.
Mind blown. Okay, so he takes it even further.
Oh, yeah. He says that all-pervading spirit, that impersonal responsive thing we talked about,
Uh-huh.
that is the universal subjective mind.
Whoa.
And our individual subjective mind is basically our personal share in the universal mind.
So that's the connection. That's the bridge between the universal and the particular.
Exactly. It solves what he called the great metaphysical difficulty. Our subjective mind links the infinite potential to our concrete reality.
So if you want to change your conditions, your reality,
You have to operate on the plane of the absolute.
which means thinking in the absolute.
Right. Impressing your subjective mind with the idea of what you want, completely separate from current conditions.
Like it's already real.
Exactly. Thinking of it as already in actual existence. You bypass the how and just focus on the what being done.
Okay, this idea of spiritual prototypes, let's unpack that.
Yeah, this is where it gets very practical. He links it to Plato's archetypes.
Old school.
Yeah. And even biblical teachings like Mark 11.24, believe that you have received them and you shall receive them.
Believe you have received, past tense.
Right. By doing that, by creating that firm mental image, that prototype, you create a nucleus.
A nucleus.
Yeah. And as soon as it's created, it starts attracting what it needs, like a seed. He even points to things like vortex rings in physics, or how a single cell starts growth in biology as examples of this universal law. Energy creating patterns growth starting from a central point.
So it's about creation through inherent growth, not force.
Precisely. The beginning, the middle, and the end of a law of nature is the principle of growth from a vitality inherent in the entity itself.
Which means, he who believeth shall not make haste. No rushing it.
No. It's about putting the growing power into the seed with deep conviction, a realizing conception. You plant, you nurture.
But he warns against messing it up, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't distrust the law of growth. That means don't try to force it with anxiety.
We'll live up to Sarah.
Or give up hope, yeah. And he makes this crucial point. Evil is brought to us by precisely the same law as good.
The law itself is neutral.
Completely. It just
Yeah.
responds to the direction of our thought, doubt, and fear. They're the inversion of the principle which builds up.
Like darkness being the absence of light. Fear isn't a thing, it's the absence of faith or understanding.
You got it. That's exactly his analogy.
So practically then, for us listening, what do?
We sow the seed, that spiritual prototype,
Okay.
and then we water it by quiet, concentrated contemplation of our desire as an actually accomplished fact.
Quiet contemplation, not straining.
No. He stresses it should feel good, accompanied by a feeling of pleasure and restfulness. Nurturing, not wrestling.
Which leads to this idea of receptivity.
Yes. Understanding the intelligence of undifferentiated spirit. Seeing the personalness within the impersonal universal mind.
It's like an ocean of intelligent life.
Undifferentiated, but intelligent, yes.
Right.
And it responds, but only how we recognize it. By the terms of its nature, it can respond to us only as we recognize it.
That's huge. That changes everything about how you might pray or set intentions.
Totally. It shifts from a world of chance or rigid external laws to one where knowledge lets you turn the via dolorosa, the path of sorrow,
into the path of joy.
Yeah. He even says the law is a person, echoing ancient mystics. We can make the cosmic personal and our personal intelligence universal.
Wow. Okay, let's connect this back to our own minds then, how they work.
Right, the reciprocal action of the universal and individual minds.
Okay.
He argues the universal mind, being subjective, just reflects back whatever concept the individual's objective mind impresses upon it.
So basically, each one externalizes in his outward circumstances precisely his idea of the universal mind.
It's a mirror. What you believe about the fundamental nature of reality shows up in your life.
That gives us incredible power then.
Potentially, yes. So when you need guidance, you see your own mind as receptive, open to the greater mind.
Okay.
But when you want to create something, you see your mind as personal, directing the universal flow.
That's his explanation for the law of supply.
Exactly. You don't run the whole show, but you draw particular benefits by essentially making up its mind for it, giving it direction.
But what about the how? Everyone gets stuck on the how. How will it happen?
Troward is very clear on this. Resolutely put aside all questioning as to the specific means.
Don't worry about the details.
Nope. Your mental effort shouldn't go into predicting the steps. It should go into seeing more clearly the rationale of the general law. Clarify the what, trust the law for the how.
Which brings us to causes and conditions. I like this
A
part.
candle analogy.
Yeah. Conditions, like light or dark in the room, are never the cause, they're effects.
Right. Darkness is just the absence of the candle flame.
So all negative conditions are just the absence of a positive cause.
Evil being negative, or privation of good, has no substantive existence in itself.
It's not a thing with power on its own.
Correct. So the way out is to stop focusing on the conditions, the secondary causes.
And go to the primary cause within us.
The region of pure ideas, yes.
So to use that first cause consciously.
You can't think of your goal as dependent on anything outside yourself. No ifs or buts. You have to know, not just hope, but know that by forming the idea in the absolute and holding it, you've shaped the first cause.
And then you can just await the result with cheerful expectancy.
Exactly. Picture it as already done on the spiritual plane, not just wishing.
Okay, what about the will? People talk about willpower all the time.
Troward has a specific take. He says will isn't creative.
Really?
Yeah. Man never creates anything. His job isn't creation, but to combine and distribute that which is already in being.
So the will directs, it doesn't generate.
Precisely. It's the centralizing principle. It holds your imagination steady on that spiritual prototype.
Like focusing a lens.
Good analogy. It keeps the picture clear, directs the energy, but it's not the light source itself.
And concentration then isn't about gritting your teeth.
No, not strenuous effort. It's about shutting out distracting thoughts, the ones that would break down that spiritual nucleus,
Okay.
and dwelling cheerfully on the certainty of the law. Calm, confident focus, not force.
And intuition, how does
Yeah.
that fit in?
Intuition. He says that's the subjective mind informing the objective conscious mind. Because the subjective mind exists in that universal here and the everlasting now, it can access information beyond our normal senses, beyond distance or future.
So intuition is like a direct down.
A point of origination, he calls it.
Uh,
Capturing ideas straight from the infinite, spontaneously.
how do you cultivate that?
He suggests meditating on abstract principles, not getting bogged down in specific problems.
Interesting.
And he makes this rather curious claim that records like the Bible, the Great Pyramid, and even a pack of cards.
A pack of cards? Seriously.
Yeah, quite the mix. He claims they show how deep thinkers open their intuition to sublime inspirations. Make of that what you will.
Okay, then. Let's look at a really concrete application, healing.
Right. Troward says the basis of all healing is a change in belief.
Because the subjective mind externalizes belief.
Exactly. So changing the belief is key. The wrong belief is seeing sickness as a primary cause itself, instead of a negative condition resulting from the absence of the true cause, which is perfect health.
Okay. And how does a healer actually work, in his view?
It's about the healer using their more conscious mind to influence the less conscious modes of spirit.
In themselves or the patient?
Both, really. He talks about establishing rapport, removing the barrier of conscious personality between healer and patient.
So the will or intention can flow between them.
That's the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And because it happens on that non-local plane, outside time and space.
That's why absent treatment or treating someone while they sleep could work.
Precisely. The connection is mental, not necessarily physical.
He also gets into the body itself, the physiology.
Yeah, he mentions experiments like Dr. Baraduc's biometer, supposedly showing a vital current affected by mental attitude.
Trying to demonstrate that the mind opens or closes doors to these invisible forces.
Right. And he talks about the dual nervous system, sympathetic for subconscious functions, voluntary for conscious action.
And the vagus nerve connecting them.
Mm-hmm. Which raises that question, if the soul is form, and doth the body make, as the poet said.
How do our thoughts literally create grooves in the brain, forming habits, maybe even affecting health?
It's a deep connection he's drawing.
And the soul itself.
He sees it as an organism, perfectly designed to connect with the all-originating spirit.
Our intuition grabs ideas from the universal mind.
And our imagination gives them shape, makes them definite.
And he says our concept of God, or the ultimate source, colors everything.
The whole form, tone, and color of our life. It's a complete feedback loop between our deepest beliefs and our lived experience.
So what's his ultimate conclusion about spirit itself?
Profound. Since it's creative, its fundamental nature must be positive, must be about increase of life.
Kindly power.
Yes. Which leads him to argue that love is the prime moving power of the creating spirit.
And its outward form
is beauty. Love and beauty is the two core aspects of the creative force.
So if we habitually focus on that dual unity of love and beauty,
Troward implies our whole being. Intuition, imagination, even the physical body starts to align and manifest those qualities.
the whole man is brought into unison with himself and with the supreme source of life.
That's the goal, becoming a clear channel.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what does this mean for you, the listener, taking this away?
Well, Troward himself says his principles are meant to enable the student to form rules for himself.
Right. Book knowledge is only a means to an end. You have to apply it.
Exactly. And he hammers home that belief in limitation is the one and only thing that causes limitation.
Wow.
End quotes. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Your inner state is the true reality. The outside just reflects it.
It all comes back to ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find.
Knock and it shall be opened unto you. That's the sum total, he says, of the natural law governing our relationship with the divine mind.
And here's the really empowering part, maybe slightly terrifying too. He says we can make our lives what we will. How? By first making ourselves in habitual mental attitude the person who corresponds to those conditions.
Become the person first, internally.
Yeah. And then he says, to this law, there is no limit.
No limit. That's a staggering claim.
It is, but it also implies a huge responsibility, right?
Absolutely. Which raises the question of discipline. He stresses trained thought is far more powerful than untrained.
So you have to be mindful.
Very. Guard against all thoughts and words expressive of even the most modified form of ill will. Because your subjective mind picks up your settled mental habits. Consistency matters.
So, his final encouragement.
Never fear to be yourself. He says if mental science doesn't teach you that, it teaches nothing.
Yourself, and yet more yourself is what you want.
Yes, but knowing that your true self includes that inner higher self connected to the divine mind.
Like Walt Whitman said, you are not all included between your hat and your boots.
Exactly. There's more to you.
So, as you, our listener, reflect on all this from Troward, here's something to think about.
Yeah.
If that law of growth really works by forming these spiritual prototypes, and if your individual subjective mind is truly part of that universal subjective mind, what deeper truths, what greater potentials might just be waiting for you to conceive them, to plant that seed and just allow it to grow maybe far beyond what you currently imagine is possible for your own life.